Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of York. We appreciate you joining us for this final Wednesday in April. You have joined the 22nd largest Rotary Club in the world, something we're very proud of. Today, we have not only an opening song, we have an invocation. So, in order, we'll have Cal Weary doing our opening song, which is This Land is Your Land, and we'll have Gordon Fryrick doing our invocation. Cal, will you take it away, please?
All right. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me the Golden Valley. This land was made for you and me. Oh, this land was made for you and me.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. During this COVID-19 pandemic, unwords have been used to describe its effects: unprecedented, unpredictable, unfathomable, uncertainty. We have become inured to the unbelievable daily numbers of the unemployed, the stricken, and the dead. For those who are in need of uplifting or healing or comfort, and in actuality, for all of us, we offer this prayer. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. Bless those in need of healing and comfort with the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. And as we move forward in these unsettling times, we know our hope in the future and our faith in you will remain unwavering. And let us say, Amen.
Great to try to get back to normal as much as we can with an opening song and an invocation. And every week we're just trying to add as much as we can to feel as normal as possible given the special circumstances that we're in. So on to announcements. As I've been saying for the last few weeks, the Give Local York program is scheduled for this very Friday, May 1st. And I believe everyone is aware that our club project this year is the Kiwanis Lake Improvement Project. Our goal is to raise $30,000 for that effort. And the overall effort is trying to raise more than $100,000. If we can do our part as the Rotary Club of York, that will really kickstart this project and allow it to move forward. Now, as a practical matter, the easiest way to contribute is on Friday to go online to givelocalyork.org and make a donation through the Rotary Club of York's specific page on the Give Local York website. At the top of the website, you'll see a list of all the different charities that are available to give to, and just scroll down and pick the Rotary Club of York and make a donation that way. If that's not possible because of logistics, you can always email Bert, and Bert will be happy to make the donation and then invoice your Rotary account. So first and foremost, we hope that everybody can participate. And if so, can you do so online, please, just to make the administrative effort for Bert a little bit easier. But if you can't do that, she'll be happy to help you out as well. Now, I hope you all noticed that we had a new format for our announcer email last week. It's now being done through Club Runner. And so for the 2 weeks now, we've had that. It's been really good. It's a nice, fresh look for our announcer email. And the information is very clear and concise and hopefully can be really beneficial to everybody. Thanks so much to Renee for getting all of that set up through the Club Runner website. And now we have the Club Runner emails as well. Appreciate the help, Renee. A quick reminder that the Donna Hayes Equine Scholarship applications are now being accepted, and they are due to the club by May 31st. And that scholarship was set up by Rotarian Al Hayes in honor of his wife, Donna. Thank you, Al. A couple quick celebrations. Congratulations to Rotarian Ben Hoover, who has received the district's Lifetime Achievement Award for his body of work throughout Rotary, both as president of our club, a past district governor, and all of the things that Ben has done for so many years for Rotary. Ben, thank you very much, and congratulations on this well-deserved award. Quick shout out to my son, Ryan George, who had a happy birthday this past Sunday. He turned a big 8 years old, and we had fun celebrating with Ryan. It's a little bit different during this time period because we can't have a birthday party for him the way that we normally might. So we did what we could to celebrate his birthday. It was a lot of fun, and happy birthday, buddy. And of course, congratulations to Rotarian Becca Hanlon on the birth of her daughter on April 20th. She and husband Will added their second child to the family. Becca, congratulations on that. I hope you're hanging in there and able to join us again as soon as you're able. Now, we're going to do something different this week. We have a poll. And if you've done a poll on a webinar before, you are familiar with this process, but hop over to your mouse or your keyboard and please try to answer this question. If everything goes right, we should be able to show you the results immediately. That's our hope. But the question this week is, what song would you like to hear next week? And we've put up a couple different choices. Number one, You're a Grand Old Flag. Number two, Battle Hymn of the Republic. Or number three, Stop with the Singing. So if you get a chance, please vote now. And as those votes come in, we'll tally those. Well, the computer will tally them. And we'll look and see exactly what the choice is. Hopefully it's not number three, but if it is, so be it. We'll work on having that answered to you momentarily, and we'll let you know what the answer was. All right, don't forget, you can only vote once. All right, we will have that for you shortly. Moving on.
Okay, and the results are, I can read those results for you here.
Great.
Yep, sorry, Josh. So the results are 46% voted, You're a Grand Old Flag, 39% Battle Hymn of the Republic. So the 15% of you that enjoyed the break of singing, I'm sorry, we are going to be continuing with the songs. Likely Your Grand Old Flag next week. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to try to do a poll like this for the next couple weeks. If you have any ideas for what that poll question should be, just let us know. We started off with a song question. We have a couple of other ideas, but we'd certainly love to hear from you to make it as much fun as we can. All right, so over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a local business spotlight, and we started out with the Small Star Art House. We did the Register of Wills office, and last week we did Springwood Hospitality. This week we're spotlighting the York Water Company, and I talked to JT Hand, and he gave me some excellent information about how the water company is maneuvering through the COVID situation and what's going on over there at this point in time. So first things first is the water company has decided not to shut off service to anybody who cannot pay at this point in time, and has been doing their best to allow everybody to have water service during this unique time period. Thanks, JT, for doing all that. I'm sure everybody really appreciates that. Of course, they've also waived all of the late payment penalties, which has been very helpful to folks who are having a difficult time paying. All of the water company employees are considered essential employees, and everybody is working. Some of the office employees are working certain days from home, certain days at the office, just to create as much social distancing as possible, but everybody is working, and glad to have that water service available to all of us during this time. Now, interestingly, JT pointed out to me that there has been no drop in consumption during this period. It seems that residential use has really increased, obviously because everybody's staying home, at the same time that some commercial and industrial demands have dropped. But the overall net effect is that consumption has stayed essentially flat through this time period, even though it might seem that it would go down. I'm sure the stock owners appreciate that, JT, as well. Now, one of the lucky pieces of this whole situation is that the water company was able to catch a Hail Mary pass here by not having as much traffic in the downtown environment. You may remember that at our meetings in early March, I mentioned from the podium a couple times about how fun it was to drive downtown because of all the traffic and the road closures associated with the water company's work. Well, obviously, with so many folks not coming downtown right now and working from home, the water company's not getting the complaints that they were, and it's been a good time to finish that construction project. JT says that work on George Street is slated to be completed by the end of the week. So hopefully that continues to be the case. And JT did have a little bit of help. He asked for a little bit of help if we could. He said from their wastewater operation standpoint, some of the things that have been going on have been creating a problem for their wastewater systems. So in particular with the toilet paper shortage, unfortunately, folks have been using other things and flushing them down the toilet. So if you're one of those people or know somebody who is, JT requests your help in asking folks not to flush anything that shouldn't be flushed. That's our spotlight of the York Water Company. It's great to do this every week. I've gotten very positive feedback about it. And please let me know if you're interested in having your specific company spotlighted. I'd be happy to do that. We have someone lined up for next week at this point, but beyond that, the slate is open. So if you're interested, please let me know, drop me an email, and we'll go from there. Now, we are on to our program. I would like to introduce our panelists, our speakers today. They are all Rotarians, County Commissioner Julie Wheeler, Kevin Schreiber, and Silas Chamberlin from the Economic Alliance. Julie, Kevin, Silas, will you take it away, please?
Great. Thank you, President Josh. So today we want to share with you an update on what the county's been doing and in partnership with the Economic Alliance around the COVID-19 pandemic. And Gordon mentioned it earlier, these are really unprecedented challenges that are facing our community. But with that brings unprecedented collaboration. And that's one thing you'll see throughout the presentation today is we've just had some extraordinary collaboration across the county with our healthcare partners, with community leaders. So couldn't have asked for a better collaboration. With that said, on to the next slide. For those of you that haven't seen this chart, I wanted to share it with you. This chart is regularly being updated on the county website. It gives a snapshot of how we are doing as a community in mitigating COVID-19. The red line on the chart shows the cumulative total number of cases since the pandemic, early stage of the pandemic, so March 18th. The yellow line reflects the total number of deaths in our community. And I want to point out, if you look at the bottom around April 22nd and April 23rd, the reason it looks like the number of deaths were up and then they went down, we use data from the Department of Health. And in the Department of Health data, until they clearly identify the cause of the death, there are some presumed positive cases in that number. So that's the reason for the blip. Right now, York County is at a total of 9 deaths due to COVID-19. And then the blue line just shows a rolling 7-day average of the number of new cases we are seeing on a daily basis. So the county's updating this regularly on the website. I want to also take a moment and pause and share with you all, when I look at data in regards to other communities that are close in proximity to us and also fairly close in size, York County, and I don't want to jinx anything by saying this, but we have done a really good job as a community of mitigating the spread of COVID-19. So when I look at York compared to Dauphin and compared to Lancaster, both are Class 3 counties, both have borders that are contiguous with York County. So in York County, when we look at to date, and again, this is only as good as the data is, so this is a given point in time. It could change tomorrow, could change next week. Of the individuals tested in York County, we are running at about an 8.5% positive rate of COVID-19 cases of the population tested. So when you compare that to Dauphin and Lancaster, Dauphin is running at 14.3% and Lancaster is close to 19%. So again, just from a data perspective, we are doing a really good job. I think there's a lot of reasons behind that. I would just continue to encourage you all to practice the social distancing and good respiratory etiquette. But the other thing I think that York County has done a great job in particular is in our long-term care facilities, and some of our congregate setting type facilities have done a really good job of getting out early on and putting preventative and precautionary measures in shape. So just keep up the great work. And I think that York is doing as best as can be expected in regards to that. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. Wanted to share a little bit about what the county is doing in response to the COVID pandemic. On the right portion of the slide, you'll see a snapshot, and you'll see another one on the upcoming side. We collaborated with our partners at the Economic Alliance, and a big shout out to Katie Mahoney, because without her help, we wouldn't have been able to pull this document together. But we have a document that's called Prepared York, and it highlights some of the initiatives the county is taking, as well as some of the initiatives we're doing in collaboration with our partners. And I'm pleased to say that it is available in both English and Spanish, available on the county website as well as the Economic Alliance website. We've also communicated this out to our friends in the Latino community for them to share with their respective communities. As a reminder, the county declared an emergency declaration on March 16th. There is no end date set for that declaration. At some point, the county will rescind that declaration, but that is ongoing. The county is closed to the public, except for our judicial system, where some court cases are still happening. I want to be clear with everyone that closed to the public doesn't necessarily coincide with the declaration. As we move our way from red, yellow to green, according to the governor's criteria, we still may have the declaration in place, but begin to open up to the public. One of the outcomes of the Board of Commissioners implementing the emergency declaration, and I want to pause here, I apologize. My colleague, Vice President Commissioner Hoke, is joining us today, so a special thank you to him for his support and joining me at Rotary today. One of the outcomes was that the commissioners had the ability to activate our Office of Emergency Management, the Incident Command Center. That's been up and running, and that Incident Command Center serves as the lead agency in management. We are coordinating with WellSpan's Incident Command Center as well as UPMC's Incident Command Center. That's all done and run out of our emergency management facility, which is located off of Concord Road. I mentioned collaboration earlier. I really cannot commend our two large healthcare partners enough for their collaboration with the county. Both WellSpan and UPMC have been working with us since March 16th and just have been great partners as we navigate our way through this crisis. We, myself and our public health strategist, Dr. Howie, have weekly calls with a core group of executives from both of those organizations, supplemented by daily calls with various stakeholders across those two institutions. The county spent a lot of time working on measures to assist our vulnerable populations, in particular those residents that live in an unsheltered type setting. The Planning Commission has taken a lead role in this in collaborating with UPMC, with WellSpan and other community partners to ensure that when this population has tested positive for COVID-19, that they've got shelter and they've got food and they have transportation. So I wanted to assure you, Rotarians, that we take those populations seriously and have ongoing efforts to make sure that they are being cared for in our community. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin now.
Thanks, Commissioner Wheeler. Thank you, Rotarians. Good afternoon. Thanks for having us today and giving us the opportunity to share some of these updates. I would be remiss if I didn't note that at any opportunity I've been granted by Rotary to present to you, I've utilized that pulpit to offer some lighthearted jabs at my good friend Henry Nixon. And I didn't want to break with tradition. However, we all know that Henry is settling in nicely to quarantine senility. And due to his limited technological prowess, he's likely not joining us today. So now that I can dispense with that, I'll get back to the business at hand. Thank you, Commissioner Wheeler, and to the Board of Commissioners. We have had a great working relationship throughout this crisis. Julie had alluded to all of the work with respect to Prepared York. The commissioners made their first emergency declaration on March 16th. And I believe it was March 17th that we went live with www.preparedyork.com. This has been an active resource page that we continue to compile and distill information and report out on a daily basis. We tried to take away the anxiety for each of you, trying to find all the information or make sense of the deluge of information we're hit with daily, in many cases as this has evolved on a daily basis. So our team is actively working on continuing to populate Prepared York. We are really viewing this through the lens of anyone that is economically impacted. So if you're an employer, an employee, if you're an individual in the community, or if you're a community organization or a business, you can find resources at Prepared York, and it continues to evolve. It will continue to evolve. And through the process of launching Prepared York, it's become a best practice. Both PEMA, our emergency management at the state, have utilized this, and as of DCED nationwide. So we've had other states reach out and utilize this as a best practice example. And working with our regional partners across Central PA, shortly thereafter launching Prepared York, we launched preparedcentralpa.com as well as a hub to connect with Cumberland, Dauphin, Lancaster counties, and others. So next slide, please, Silas. I'll turn it back to you.
Yep, I want to continue to highlight that even though county government is closed to the public, we are open for business. We've got many 24/7 operations. So the prison is open, the Youth Development Center is open, 911 obviously is open. But in addition to that, you know, we have a very large human services department that services children and youth, services our older adults. We have a Veterans Affairs office. They are still up and running to the public. Yeah, I'm really excited that, for example, our Veterans Department worked through our Records Improvement Committee to have an e-signing option available now for veterans, so they don't physically have to come into the building. Working with our Drug and Alcohol Commission, I'm pleased to say that we still have the ability to interact with individuals who may need counseling and care, who are battling those types of issues. That's being done telephonically. So I want to assure the community that all of those operations are up and running. We just had one of our commissioners meetings today. They're all live streamed on Facebook and on channel 18 on cable. We've been using the latter part of the commissioners meeting to also serve as an outreach to the community and give updates. So there is a weekly update that I share on WellSpan's behalf, that I share on UPMC's behalf. We kind of rotate community partners. Typically, Sully will come from the Economic Alliance and give updates. So we are really using that as a mechanism, not just to conduct county business, but also to share with our community the activities that are going on around COVID-19. One of our fellow Rotarians, Register of Wills, Brian Tate, has been very creative in continuing to provide those services to the community with virtual probate and virtual marriage licenses. So I commend fellow Rotarian Brian Tate for embracing new technology in a way to continue to serve our community. Many of the county staff are working remotely where it can be, so we're doing our best to practice the social distancing and all of those things that we need to do, but still conduct county business. We've done a lot of outreach to different demographics in our community. I was very excited last week to do a video with our Black Ministers Association and our Baptist Ministers Conference, so reaching out to that community on a regular basis, as well as our Latino community. We've started a weekly video, Sully Pinos and I obviously speak the English portion and Sully speaks the Spanish portion, but we're doing little snippet videos each week that then are getting circulated amongst the Latino community to share and update them on what's going on around COVID-19. So really doing our best to reach all of our residents out there in York County. I'm going to turn it back to Kevin.
Last week, we launched our first virtual job fair. Obviously, we know that many of our neighbors and friends and family have been affected by this. Their employment status has changed over the course of this crisis. We continue to utilize Prepared York to push out resources, educational, informational, whether it's our own webinars or other community organizations or businesses throughout York County. So go to Prepared York if you want more information. Last week, we launched our first job fair virtually that was offered in both Spanish and English. Go ahead, Silas. And we've also used the Prepared York website to really drive resources to our local sourcing initiative. I think it's safe to say that maybe 6 weeks ago, the acronym PPP was not necessarily as accustomed into our daily vernacular as it is now. And we know much of the challenges to locate PPE for our healthcare organizations and our first responders and local governments. But what hasn't necessarily been as documented, and certainly not here locally, is all of the solutions that our local companies are providing for our healthcare organizations. We've seen the shift of local manufacturers and local companies to drive PPE solutions. some companies that we can immediately give, light shout outs to Allegheny, York, as shown here in the photo, using 3D printing and making face shields for our healthcare companies. Other companies like Catapult Engineers up in Dillsburg, our own distilleries here in York, Hala Spirits and Old Republic Distillery have made the shift to producing sanitizer. So we are driving a lot of those resources via this website, trying to play matchmaker between those who need PPE and those who can produce PPE. And we can attest that our healthcare organizations and certainly WellSpan have taken full advantage of the companies. And thank you to those companies and organizations and individuals who are really on the front lines trying to answer the call for the needed equipment. We've also seen some pretty inventive collaborations in trying to solve the crisis at hand. Our local United Way, our community foundation, have created the COVID response fund and just recently awarded just shy of $200,000 to several of our nonprofit organizations who are on the front lines meeting the needs of our most vulnerable. Thank you to any Rotarians who have contributed personally or through your organization to that fund. It does make a significant difference. And again, one more shout out for Give Local York this coming Friday. Incidentally, any donations to Downtown Inc. will go to a Downtown Bloom grant program for small businesses to restart. So as you're making your donations, think of Downtown Inc. We continue to see other novel, innovative partnerships. Our food bank obviously has seen the uptick in surge in need. Our Cultural Alliance, Kelly Gibson has done a phenomenal job trying to get resources to our independent artists and our arts organizations. We continue to try to consolidate and compile as much information at individual fingertips as possible via Prepared York and a whole bevy of other resources as well. Go ahead, Silas.
Okay, great. I did want to mention one phone number. Hopefully you're all at home and can write this down. As you hear about specific food, shelter, transportation type needs in our community, please feel free to call the Incident Command Center and highlight those to the staff out there. That number is 717-840-2990. They've been triaging a lot of the needs out in the community. So should you hear or know of someone that needs assistance in those types of areas, please feel free to contact Incident Command. As we migrate through this ever-evolving situation, right, and learning to adapt to change, I wanted to share a few things the county has done and some changes to some processes. Number one, if you aren't aware, the governor, through legislation, moved the primary election to June 2nd. So June 2nd, we will have the 2020 primary. We've got 161 polling locations in York County. Part of the legislation that was passed gives the counties the ability to combine polling locations. You know, we have a few polling locations in York County that are in senior centers, and certainly we are not going to be holding a physical election in those types of facilities. So the Board of Elections is working very hard to look for areas that can be combined and also look for new locations that could handle a larger capacity of voters. And along with that comes making sure that we've got processes in place to continue to practice social distancing, not just for the voters coming in to cast their ballot, but also the people who are working at the polls. So we are working on processes for those individuals as well. If you'd like to vote by mail, which we are certainly encouraging at this juncture, you can do so. The deadline's May 26th. You can go to yorkcountypa.gov and click on the voter election tab and request a mail-in ballot. To date, we've received over 23,000 requests for mail-in ballots. As a comparison, in 2016, during that presidential primary, the total number of mail-in ballot requests we received were 3,000. So the county also has to prepare for the ability to get all those envelopes open and get all of those scanned before election night closes. So we're working on some internal processes to facilitate efficiencies there. So again, primary June 2nd. If you want a mail-in ballot, you have till May 26th to request that. The county stepped up to participate in the $100 million mask challenge. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the American Hospital Association put out this challenge. And so the county donated 1,095 masks to both WellSpan and UPMC. So we got on board with that request from the American Hospital Association. I wanted to highlight some efforts the prison has taken in regards to helping the community. The prison has the ability to purchase food at a very economical price point. So I mentioned earlier about the work the Planning Commission was doing to help some of our vulnerable population who've been inflicted with COVID-19. The prison is actually supplying the food for those folks that are impacted and doing it in a very cost-efficient manner. The other thing that they're doing is they're making masks, cloth masks, and donating them to shelters. So I really want to commend the prison warden and his team for just stepping up and, you know, helping out during this time, given the fact that they still have to run a 24/7 operation. Below are two just photos of some interactive tools that we've developed. We tried running the videos yesterday, but it didn't work too well, so we can certainly send the links later. But the one you see on the screen on the left was developed by our Human Services Department, and that's an outreach to our children and youth to let them know they're not alone, and if they need help, where they can call to get help. The picture on the right, planning put together, and that's an interactive recreational site map. So you can go in there and look at what parks are open, look at what services they provide, look at what trails are open. Very, very interactive. It also actually has information on adjoining counties. So weather's going to get nice, practice social distancing, use that tool, and get outside. So next slide, please. You know, the county will continue to collaborate with people like the Economic Alliance and WellSpan and UPMC. We still have a lot of work to do. York County has not hit the surge yet in COVID-19 cases, so we will continue to put planning measures in place. I did want to mention that one tool that we've put together is a bed planning tool that was done in combination with WellSpan and UPMC, and it highlights by healthcare facility in our community the bed capacity. So we at any given point in time know the number of med-surg beds available, the number of ICU beds available, and it's been a great tool that our Incident Command Center developed. So we have line of sight to where a potential gap may be in bed capacity when the surge does hit our community. So all those things will still continue to go on, but we do recognize that we are going to move into a recovery phase, and we've already started some efforts around recovery, and Silas and Kevin are going to share in detail some of the things around economic implications and recovering from that. And I wanted to share with you that the Board of Commissioners has formalized a York County Strong Recovery Task Force. We mentioned it today at the Board of Commissioners meeting, and we'll be doing some media communications the remainder of this week. The task force comes from community leaders who are subject matter experts. We are charging the leaders of the focus groups to have an initial report due in by May 8th and a final report around May 20th. There are roughly 8 to 10 focus areas in that. But the overarching theme in all of those areas is going to be, you know, from a continuous improvement perspective, what worked in the first 45 days, what didn't work, right? Hopefully none of us will have to live through this again, but I think there's a lot of lessons learned that we can apply to future activities. So they're going to be chartered with looking at that, be chartered with putting plans in place around mitigating future impact and the resurgence, making sure we're activating the appropriate county assets. And in particular, we know that public policy certainly plays a piece in all of this. So we're going to be asking each one of the focus areas to kind of look at their respective areas and where would we need to have some policies changed. So with that, I'll briefly just highlight some of the areas of focus on the next page. There's a few there that we are going to highlight. There's a few that aren't listed there. Again, as we roll this out to the community and the media, we've got some collateral you can see there on the right side that we've put together. One thing, you know, we recognize is that we need to make sure in all of our efforts that we are being equitable and inclusive on all of our county residents. And that will also be a theme that each one of the focus areas will address. But in addition, we felt very strongly that that is so important to our community that we will have a focus area in and of itself around that. So there's a few areas. I wanted to tee that up, that we've got a rigorous and robust plan to move forward, and more to come.
One of the aspects of that recovery plan is the economic recovery and restart of our county. It was in the fourth quarter of last year that we embarked on our county's economic action plan in partnership with the county government, our York County Planning Commission, the City of York, and a bevy of other partners. That economic action planning process was slated to take the duration of 2020. We enlisted an economist and consultant, Fourth Economy, out of Pittsburgh. And we began that work in earnest in the fourth quarter and really kicking it off formally in the first quarter of this year. Obviously, with the last 5 or 6 weeks, the world has turned upside down. We saw the immediate need to pivot the work of our economists to help us understand the economic impact of the current crisis right now and do some modeling of what recovery can look like. So we will still kind of continue on 2 parallel tracks. One is we are and will continue on our economic action plan for the county, and that will continue to take the duration of this year. But we have begun work, and a couple weeks ago asked our economists to begin some of that modeling, and we've started to receive some of the early data thus far, and that's what we wish to share with you today. And it will continue, and I know Silas will plug, we also have a webinar tomorrow afternoon at noon that will do a much deeper dive with Fourth Economy on hand. So we're going to give you a sample, a short summary of some of the data slides. If you'd like a deeper dive, join us tomorrow on that webinar, and I'll turn it over to Silas.
All right, hi everybody. I'll try to move through these slides quickly, and as Kevin said, tomorrow, Thursday, 12 to 1:30, you can register for the webinar at preparedyork.com/webinars, or you can email Kevin or I, and we can connect you to the right place. But this is the Cliff Notes version. If you're interested in the data behind some of these findings and some more in-depth analysis, then join us tomorrow. I want to start by thanking the Powdermill Foundation, the Wareheim Foundation, the York County Community Foundation, and the commissioners for supporting the Economic Action Plan, because their support has allowed us now to pivot very quickly into a data analysis phase of the project related to COVID. So we, as always, appreciate your support. The reason that we're so concerned about being deliberate with our economic recovery is this graph, which shows you our recovery from the last Great Recession in 2007 to 2009. You can see York County is the yellow and PA on a whole is the blue. You can see that our economy was actually growing in employment more rapidly than the state as an overall before the recession, but then we dipped below Pennsylvania's average and continued to lag behind the next 8 years or so and had a much slower recovery than the rest of the state. And so if we aren't deliberate and don't have a strategy behind our recovery, we can expect similar results this time around. Here's some of the data that we've collected so far. And keep in mind, a lot of these are estimates and based on economic modeling. They aren't specific numbers, but they give you a sense of the impact. So we have roughly 9,000 businesses in York County, and right now roughly 4,000 of them are closed, and an additional 620 have some restrictions placed on their normal operations. So you can see the impact of COVID has been significant. With the lifting of some of those restrictions, some of those businesses will be able to come back right away. Others will have more obstacles ahead of them. The closures right now are affecting, in particular, the industries that are deemed non-life sustaining and cannot be done remotely. Those include manufacturing, construction, accommodation and food, education and retail. You can also see by the length of each bar the portion of employment in York County that industry represents. And so some of our most important industries by employment are affected by this in a negative way. You can also see some of the more resilient industries like healthcare, transportation, and warehousing have not been as affected as much as some like manufacturing, construction, and retail. Within that overall impact, we looked very specifically at small businesses. We have roughly 4,700 small businesses, many of them independent businesses. And small here is by the federal definition of fewer than 500 employees. And you can see within the small business sector, construction, accommodation, food, manufacturing, and retail are hit the hardest. And it's worth noting that small businesses have fewer cash resources and assets that they can lean on during a disruption like this, and therefore are most vulnerable. This is a slide where if you join us tomorrow, you'll see a lot more of our scenarios and forecasts that we've modeled. But just based on this slide, you can see two scenarios, one the bleakest and one the best case. But either way, you can see significant loss of businesses, significant business failure of somewhere between 19% and 31% of all small businesses. We know many of those small businesses are concentrated in the city of York and in our boroughs throughout the county. And so you can start seeing the impact that we'll likely see about 2 months out or 2 months since the COVID crisis began. And again, that's a snapshot. There's much more to say about that tomorrow. We also asked the question, how are the county's most vulnerable households impacted by this? In our county, we have 39,500 households that have a household budget below a living wage but above the poverty line, and another 13,000 households living below the poverty line. And although those households are being helped right now in some ways by the federal unemployment contributions and the state unemployment system, you can see that over time into July and August, as some of those subsidies begin to end, that folks in those households start to fall below the survival budget. And that's when we really see a dire crisis with our social services and the need for more federal and state legislation to help those households that are falling behind. That's a very significant impact to the county, and I know it's something of concern to the United Way, to the Community Foundation, and others. The last slide that we'll show today is one that's also very dire, and it may be one that's not on your radar already. It's childcare capacity. So even before COVID hit, we had 6,700 children in the county that did not have access to quality childcare. Now that 46% of all childcare facilities are closed, there's an unmet need of nearly 16,000 children. We don't anticipate that all 46% of those childcare centers will reopen, and if they do, it will be with limited sizes of students that they can allow back or children that they can allow back. And so we see this not just as a quality of life issue or a social service issue, but also a workforce development issue. If we're opening our economy, we want to get our workforce back to work. They don't have the childcare that they need to make that possible. So we'll be digging a little bit deeper into that and working with some of the strong advocates we have in the community to try to get them the resources that they need. So the key findings quickly, this is a crisis. There's no sugarcoating that. The impact is widespread and lasting for the entire county, for businesses and for individuals. Vulnerable businesses and populations who were vulnerable before COVID hit will be affected disproportionately. And those are especially our Main Street businesses in the city of York and our boroughs throughout the county, and our Alice population who are already struggling for survival prior to COVID, and who now are going to be the hardest hit in terms of layoffs and lack of access to subsidies, at least in the long term. The duration of closure is a key to business survival rates. That's something that our data shows that I didn't have time to share with you today, but it really emphasizes the need to expedite that phased reopening, following the public health protocols, but also trying to get businesses back as soon as they can. But even the businesses that survive will have exhausted much of their cash on hand during the crisis, and therefore will have trouble reopening. There are resources out there to help mitigate the worst of these impacts. We're familiar with the Federal CARES Act that's offered the PPP program, the Economic Disaster Loan Program. There are some federal grants that are emerging that could help address some issues. And then Pennsylvania had put together $60 million for COVID working capital assistance loans, and we've made 20 plus of those loans available in York County. And then the city of York and the York County are talking about ways that they can allocate community development block grant funds to help folks who may have fallen through the other state and federal programs that are out there to support them. One of the things that Julie and the commissioners and the Planning Commission and Kevin and I have been talking about is the creation of a YOCO Strong Recovery Fund, which would be a revolving loan fund aimed at assisting businesses to restart or rescale to full operations, knowing that many of them will have lost their cash on hand or extended their credit limits during the crisis itself. We're looking at the potential to seed this with a portion of the York County CDBG funds and then match it with philanthropic support and support from financial institutions. And we would look at it primarily as a restart and recovery fund rather than emergency funding, knowing that our data shows us that significant portion of businesses are going to struggle to survive, and the ones who do survive will need help reopening so that they can be sustainable in the future. Beyond that, we are, of course, part of the task force process, and we'll be using this data to inform our economic recovery strategy overall. And again, it's worth saying that this is a snapshot, the Cliff Notes version of our data. We have much more to share tomorrow, so if you can join us, great, or be sure to watch the recorded version of that webinar when you can. Thank you.
So just in closing, no aspect of our lives has not been touched by this crisis. And York County government is working around the clock to foster collaboration, drive innovation, and muster resources to protect our population and meet this challenge, get through it together. So thank you to our county employees, and thank you to everyone who is out there on the front lines, our healthcare workers, our workers in grocery stores, our postal workers. Just thank you for all you do. So with that, I think the three of us will open it up for questions.
All right, Julie, Silas, Kevin, thanks so much for presenting today. We do have a couple questions here. First question is, what's ALICE, A-L-I-C-E?
So ALICE is an acronym that really means the folks in the community who, as a household, earn below the living wage, which is the budget that they need to get their basic services and basic needs met, but above the poverty line. So those folks that are just getting by, but when a disruption like this comes along, are significantly threatened because of loss of work or because they don't have access to other support services. So it's been a useful sort of category of focus for United Way and other organizations that really focus on social service and vulnerable populations.
The acronym does stand for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed.
You have to look that up on your phone, Kevin.
I did, yeah. We actually had a debate yesterday whether we should include the acronym or not. Clearly, we did not make the right decision.
Clearly.
All right, next question. Regarding the mail-in ballots for the June 2nd primary, if you receive a mail-in ballot, are you then locked into mailing in your vote, or can you still go to the poll the day of the primary?
So you can still go to the poll, but what happens is when we start to undo that, there's two envelopes, right? It's the envelope the ballot's in and the envelope is in with the ballot in. So those we have through the legislation the ability to start opening those at 7 a.m. on election day. We have to check that if you requested a mail-in ballot, if you received a mail-in ballot and you sent it back in, we will notify the judge of elections at your respective polling places. And if you go there and want to vote, you won't be able to. So we do have the ability to have some checks and balances so that we're not duplicating votes. If you get a mail-in ballot and you don't send it back in, yes, you can go and vote at your polling location.
Excellent. Good to know. Next question, if your county reopens before a neighboring county, for example, Lancaster, how can we protect people who live in Lancaster but work in York from exposing York residents to COVID?
We continue to practice the same things that we're doing now, right? Social distancing, wearing of the mask if you can't social distance. Those are things we are going to have to work through, but we will continue to take precautionary measures to protect our residents. So for example, in county operations, everyone gets their temperature checked when they come into the building, regardless whether they're an employee or they're someone going into the judicial center from the public. So those types of precautionary measures will be in place. Now, for how long, I don't know. I hope a year from now we're not having to take folks' temperatures, but time will tell, and the guidance we get from both the governor and our healthcare providers will weigh in those decisions and those processes.
This next question kind of goes along with that. Is the state communicating with the county commissioners regarding the date to start businesses reopening?
Yes, we've been given guidance on criteria that we have to meet, so we are in constant communication with them. There's a couple factors. I won't go into all of them. One is we need to be able to demonstrate over a 14-day period that we have no more than 50 new cases occurring in a community with COVID-19. That's a metric that we are tracking daily. It's only one of the metrics we're going to be asked to measure up to. But I can share with you that as of Monday, we were, our 14-day average was around 63. So we're not far from 50. So that will be one criteria. The other thing that we'll obviously need to continue to look at is when we've made our way through the surge and we flatten the curve. So there are many things that we are looking at, and yes, we are in constant communication with the state on those and our ability to meet those.
Next question is specifically addressed to Silas. Silas, do you have any statistics on the number of York County businesses who have received PPP funding?
There's a Pennsylvania number, and there's also the estimate of 20% of businesses that will get PPP. Obviously, the first round was overwhelmed with applicants, and we know that thousands of those were from York County. There's now the new tranche of funds that were just released to PPP, and those are probably mostly committed to folks that were in that first pipeline. Kevin, do you know of any exact numbers for York County?
No, just that 20% statistic. That is sort of the rule of thumb we've been utilizing thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the county will receive any specific numbers on this as the program continues to unfold?
Yeah, I do. I think the first, as Silas noted, the first wave has been statewide data, and I think it's been more difficult to boil it down county by county. It won't shock me if we receive that at some point. Question becomes at that point, is it still that relevant or not? But at some point in time, I think we'll get a little bit more detailed micro data on that.
Here's a follow-up question to the one about mail-in balloting. It says, I've been notified that I'm approved, but haven't yet received my ballot. When should I expect to receive it?
Oh, that's a great question. The printing of the ballots was somewhat delayed. We depend upon the state to give us approval on the ballot, so that comes from them. They do that for all 67 counties. So we are in the process of having those printed. I would share with folks that there are 382 types of ballots that need to be printed. So 161 polling locations, a ballot for Democrats, a ballot for Republicans. So we are planning that those get out, in the next few weeks. But keep in mind, we got delayed because there was a delay from the state in approving the ballots for the 67 counties.
Next question, and sort of an opinion question. Will starting a new small business be a good or a bad idea when recovery starts? Kevin, you should take that one.
That's a philosophical question. In the data that I think it's in tomorrow's presentation, if not, I know we can share this. One of the key metrics that we've been analyzing is the birth rate of businesses in Pennsylvania and in York County. And it was fair to say, and Silas, jump in if I'm getting this incorrect, but it was fair to say that York County did have a positive birth rate of businesses in recent years leading up to the COVID crisis. It's also fair to say that the birth rate of businesses does go up in historically in the after effect in the wake of a crisis. So to the question, I mean, obviously that's a loaded question of what type of business and all of those things that go into it. Obviously, yes, we would love you to start that business. We do think, individuals who are affected by this, obviously this isn't not to lighten that at all, but they are entrepreneurial in mindset. And, we do think that there will be a business birth rate out of this. It is also our hope, and if you have any discussions with any of your federal or state elected officials, advocate that there be resources made available for entrepreneurs, either launching a new venture or restarting an existing venture. Because we know in the wake of this crisis that the financial burden is significant. We know the barriers to entry exist, and we know that we want to lessen those and try to propel people forward, and hence looking at any type of localized funding that we can muster. But so answer is yes, definitely, and open it here in York, and then let Rotarians know how they can support you.
A follow-up to that question is, you mentioned birth rates. Do you expect there to be a baby boom in 9 months in York County? Everybody's home.
If there was a baby boom after the Eagles won the Super Bowl in Philadelphia, Lord knows there's going to be a COVID baby boom as a result of this. In fact, Silas and I were joking one day, we were thinking that 18 years from now, that will solve the workforce challenge that we currently have.
Well, I also think it depends on the household, because we might actually see birth rates decline with spending too much time together.
the first 2 weeks was good. The rest of it, not so
Social
much.
distancing takes on a whole new level.
The honeymoon's over.
5 weeks.
All right, back to a serious question here. How can PPE supplies be made available to businesses as they need to open? Ordering online has been difficult in preparation, and many orders that are placed have been canceled.
I would encourage any business that's having trouble accessing PPE to reach out directly to Economic Alliance, to myself, or to Sully Pinos. We do have providers in York County and outside of York County that do have supplies and inventories of PPE. There's a delay in some of those because they're coming from outside the state, or they're taking a while to be produced. We're also standing up a couple companies in the region that are producing PPE for the first time, including like medical grade N95s versus surgical masks. So a lot is going on, and if you had a struggle a week ago, we may be able to help with it now, but please reach out and we can help make those connections.
Last question, and you're off the hook. Would you consider adding the daily case average to that graph you showed us? It would be helpful for business owners to see that official number ourselves.
I will investigate that. I don't want to make any commitments I can't deliver. What I don't want is the graph to get too busy and that people look at it and not understand what everything means on there. So I'll certainly take that back to Incident Command and see if there's something we can do to address that. For whoever's asking that question, certainly you can reach out to me at any time, and I'd be happy to share that, data with you.
Terrific. Thanks to all of you for presenting today. It was great having our Rotarians who are also business leaders in the community. And Julie, as a county commissioner, thank you so much for being with us today. Quick round of applause for our speakers today. And as we've been trying to do over the last couple of weeks, we are back to our book donations. This week, the book is called Far Away by author Lisa Graff. And we had asked Bert to take a picture of this book with her in the picture, but she declined. So maybe we'll get her to do that next week. But in the meantime, we'll ask Silas and Kevin and Julie to sign the book plate that will be placed in that book and ultimately donated to the York Suburban Middle School Library. Everyone, thank you very much. I would like to just put a quick plug in for next week's meeting. We'll have our youth-bound exchange students. They will be heading back to their home countries very shortly, but we have our annual youth exchange program with them. One of the students has already returned home. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to join us virtually from home in Belgium or not, but if possible, hopefully we'll have all 3 students for next week's meeting. Thanks very much for joining us. This meeting is adjourned.